Hello there, and welcome to episode 9 of the HEAS Podcast. Today we have two really exciting guests for you to hear from. The first of whom is Marcel Weiss. Marcel is an archaeologist. He's very interested in Neanderthals, in particular the period between 100,000 years ago to 40,000 years ago, which is this key period when Neanderthals disappear from the fossil record. He's going to tell us a lot about his amazing work at the site of Ranis in eastern Germany, where we find evidence for the early incursion of Homo sapiens around 45,000 years ago into the Eurasian continent. And then our second guest today is Aurélien Mounier. He's a paleoanthropologist, and he's done some fascinating work in Africa, field work around Lake Turkana in northern Kenya. And he's coupled this with some groundbreaking work in geometric morphometrics, the study of, in this case, human skull morphologies and shapes and how that reflects upon human evolution. So we're delighted once again to see you and to welcome you. Stay curious, stay engaged, and enjoy the HEAS podcast with your interviewer, Victoria Oberreiter.
Hi, Marcel, and welcome to the HEAS Podcast.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me here. Thanks a lot.
We're so happy to have you here. Let's start with a quick introduction. Could you please tell our listeners a bit about yourself and your research focus?
Yeah, so my name is Marcel Weiss. I am working at the moment at the Friedrich-Alexander-Universität in Erlangen in Bavaria in the Institute for Ur- und Frühgeschichte. That means prehistory. And I am an archaeologist. I did my PhD at the Max Planck Institute for Hominin Evolution in Leipzig and in the Leiden University. And I was working as a postdoc in Leipzig, and now I'm assistant professor in Erlangen. And my research focus is on Palaeolithic archaeology, mostly on late Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens. If you were to put it chronologically, it's the time period between, and now it's a very, very long time period, 120,000 years ago up to 40,000 years ago.
Okay, you already mentioned it. A big part of your research focuses on the interactions between early Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. One of your recent papers, which has gained a lot of attention, discusses how Homo sapiens reached higher latitudes much earlier than we had previously thought. Can you tell us about the key findings of this research and why this early arrival of Homo sapiens so far to the north is significant?
The key findings is that modern humans, Homo sapiens, early Homo sapiens, have been earlier in northern Central Europe and northwestern Europe than we previously thought, because before, or the state of research was like that around 40,000 years ago, a little bit later, we have a techno-complex called the Auric Nation. It came up a large or huge wave of Homo sapiens into Europe. But now we could show that even in the time period before, so maybe 5 to 10,000 years earlier, we already have small groups of humans venturing in the northern areas. And this is very interesting. We didn't know it so far. There's also some lithics, stone artifacts attached to it, where we previously thought they were made by Neanderthals. But now we could show that these tools were made by Homo sapiens. Whereas both are our relatives, by the way. So we have 2% of Neanderthals, so they are both our relatives.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because if you think about where these 2% came from, it means that we did have an overlap and also interaction with them. Maybe we can go into that a little bit, because I think I haven't spoken about that before. Bearing in mind the harsh climatic conditions at the time, that also means that Homo sapiens were highly resilient and adaptable, right?
Yeah. We know they used fire at the site, of course, right? And we know that Neanderthals were also adapted to colder environments, but yeah, maybe they moved in the more southern regions, more favorable conditions. And Homo sapiens, they really moved to the north. We did not really expect this, but there's another site in Bulgaria called Bachukiro, which had at the same time modern humans from a different branch, let's say, a little bit genetically. But there, Sarah Pedersani, a good colleague of me, could also, based on the isotopes of horse teeth, you can reconstruct the climate on a yearly basis. And she could also say for Ranis and also for Bachukiro that climatic conditions were really harsh. So imagine a treeless tundra-like environment. And how they really lived, or why did they go there? I mean, in these open landscapes, of course, we have a large biomass of herbivores, means animals that you could hunt, right? And maybe this attracted them to go there.
Paper we were first talking about, you investigated a site in Germany. That's what I was referring to as so far up north in Ranis, right?
Yeah.
And now coming to the horse teeth. How can you measure climatic conditions from horse teeth?
Yeah, this is interesting. It's not my field of expertise, of course. So this is, for example, Sarah Petersani, who is co-author and author of one of the studies related to this Ranis papers. Basically, you measure the stable isotopes of oxygen, and there are different stable isotopes of oxygen that are accumulated during colder periods, and there are certain ones that are more accumulated during warmer periods. And so from these stable isotope, to phrase it, make it very, very simple, you can reconstruct temperature. And this is, where does this come from? Because horses are drinking water, like every one of us. And if they drink the local water, then these stable isotopes of oxygen get accumulated in the teeth.
That's very impressive. I was also impressed by the multidisciplinary approach that you applied for the Ranis paper, where I think you also included stable isotope analysis. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And radiocarbon dating, zooms, and ancient DNA analysis. So that's a huge scientific effort, and not to forget the extensive fieldwork, archaeological fieldwork that was conducted. Can you tell us about a very specific thing during excavation that stood out to you? What can we imagine what you did in the field?
Okay. Imagine you come to the site and you look in an 8-meter deep hole. So basically,
and then you have to crawl into it?
Yeah. It's not the cave where you go into the cave, but it was a hole in front of the cave. And at the beginning, we did not really know how deep we have to go, because it was excavated from 1932 to 1938. We have the profiles, that means the drawings of the sections from this from the old former excavation. But we did not really know how deep we have to go, because they remodeled the landscape after they stopped their excavation in 1938. So it could have been that we only have to go 3 meters, but in the end, we really had to go down like 8 meters. So we documented everything, and then we built like with big wooden boards and with scaffolding. We secured the walls, and you had a ladder to climb in, and then we had a small, it was like a well, basically a little bit. It was really deep. And one thing at the excavation which really puzzled us, or was disappointing at the beginning, that we had a big block at the floor of our excavation, a big block of rock. Why do we have it? Because the cave roof collapsed after the modern human occupation. And this rock was 1.70 meter thick. And we had to remove it. So we drilled like 30 holes in it and filled it with a expansive concrete. And this breaks the rock. And then it was broken in columns, and we had to destroy the columns, bring this all out, and then we were really happy to find the layers above it. So it was a huge effort. But given the results, it was good that we did it, and I think I would do it again. I believe.
It's really cool that you're sharing this story. This goes out to all the people who think, like my grandma, by the way, who think that archaeologists are only using like a little brush, and that's all they do.
We use that too.
Later on,
yeah.
After you removed this huge rock and you got rid of that. So what did you find under this rock?
Sediments, a lot of bones, bones.
Good.
Because the site was also a cave bear hibernating place and a hyena den. So that means you find a lot of bones that were broken by hyenas, chewed by hyenas, digested by hyenas, and then in between you have a blackish layer, and this was the human occupation. Why is it blackish? Because, of course, they made fire at the side, and then you have the charcoal that is mixed into the sediment and gives it a dark grayish color. And there we found lithic artifacts, so small ones, and of course, the charcoal. And we found 4 human bones in our excavation. Then we applied, as you said, all these methods. We applied zooms and ancient DNA, and Hélène Rochier and her team. They worked on the collection of the 1932 to 1938 excavation, and they found even 9 bones more.
Oh, wow.
And so we, from the same layers, and we could connect them via the radiocarbon dating, via mitochondria DNA. So we know they come from the same time period and they are the same population. So we have bones from the new excavation and from the old excavation. And you might ask, yeah, why do you do the new excavation, right? It's just we create a time window. So in the 1932 to 1938, they excavated as much as they can. And now we only need a small profile, small place, and to understand stratigraphy, to get the samples for dating, to get the samples for the DNA, and to really learn about the stratigraphy better, because now we have finer excavation methods. So not only the rock destroying, we also have the brush, and then we can make this.
So you got all the layers of scientific information that you could get, or like all the levels, I would say. So then your evidence is really solid.
Yeah.
And I think we have to mention that finding human bones sometimes really it doesn't look like that you find a whole skull and you're like, it's human. But these are usually very fragmented. How did you go back then to the old material of the old excavation, and how were you able to identify these probably fragmented bones as human?
So we have several strategies, right? From the new excavation. You asked about the old, but I start with the new.
Yeah, go ahead.
We did we used all the bones that we could not identify. The zoo archaeologist Geoff Smith could not identify, and Dora Milo-Potamitaki did ZooMS. What is ZooMS? It means zoo archaeology by mass spectrometry. So you can, with a mass spectrometer, you can find out, to make it very simple, if the bone is human or if it's an animal. And you can go but you can't go to the species level. So then you apply aDNA and you see if it's Neanderthal or if it's Homo sapiens. And we did the same for the old collection. And we identified there already 2. Then we identified all the 4 bones from our new excavation using this technique. But at the same time, Hélène Rochier, she's a very experienced anthropologist, physical anthropologist. She went through the old collection and she found many suspicious bones. Some she could already identify, like some clavicles that you see in our publication, but then also some fragments of long bones where she said, this might be human. And they were directly given to aDNA analysis. And so this is how we could find it out.
That's amazing. Thanks for these great insights. Now, let's talk a bit more about Neanderthals. At a risk of sounding like a broken record, because I keep on asking this question, but I have you in front of me as an expert, why do you think Neanderthals went extinct?
I don't like the term they went extinct.
Because we still carry
the
so what would you say?
So they are ancestors. I always say they disappear from the anthropological or from the archaeological record, and their life way disappears because this associated stone tool industries disappear. But I think, their population density was very low. Maybe they just got absorbed by modern humans.
By us.
In the end, by us, we know that. So we have a handful of bones, and we are getting more and more, especially also with Ranes, and there will come a new paper by the end of this year, I hope, with the nuclear DNA analysis. So we will learn even more. So for now, we have the mitochondrial DNA, and we, Aref Sümer and colleagues, are writing on the nuclear DNA, and it gets more insights. And so we know that there were several Neanderthal introgressions into our genome. So there was an initial one where all the out of Africa populations participate, but we know from Bachukiro that there was a second one, and then you have different populations with different Neanderthal introgressions. So they met several times. Maybe how this interaction looks like, I don't know, but it seems like that they mixed several times, right? And then somehow the Neanderthals vanished. Right. But how this looked, I think in every region of Europe might have looked differently.
Yeah. I will try to remember to not say extinct from now on.
No, it's okay. But I always used it as well, but it's not really, you can't say it. It's not wrong.
But let's try to be accurate. So
I'm Neanderthal PC.
And now let's move on to our next segment, which is the listener questions. As I told you, I go on Instagram and I collect questions from our listeners. And we got two nice ones for you today.
Okay, I'm happy.
Ready? All right.
Okay, ready.
What kind of technological innovations did early Homo sapiens bring with them that might have given them an edge over Neanderthals?
Oh, wow.
Right?
This is a good question, and this is always these short and simple questions require long answers, maybe. They brought something new because this technocomplex, this early Homo sapiens and Ranis brought them, was called the Lincolnbian Ranesian Yershmanovician. Very difficult word. Call it LRJ. It's more simple. And what you find in all those sites are elongated blade points. And Andrzej Wiśniewski and his colleagues from Poland, they have shown based on use were that they were maybe attached to spears or lances or thrusting spears. And this is an innovation because it also, you need a different stone manufacturing technology to produce these points. On the other hand, I'm not sure if this gives them an edge over Neanderthals. Because, I mean, in Neanderthals, they lived there for 300,000 years, and we know they had wooden spears, but wooden spear can injure an animal as well as a spear with a stone tip. So, and they were very experienced hunters. They survived so many climates and climatic changes in Europe and in Central Europe. So I don't really know if this gave them an edge. When we came later to the more evolved Upper Paleolithic, so the Aurignacian, or I'm talking time period between starting from 40,000 years ago, right? We are coming, and in the Gravettian, this is the time period later, around 30,000 to 25,000 years ago, we are coming more to a blade technology, which is really focused on making blades, making small bladelets, and then attach them to the weapons and have a different weaponry, and maybe this can give them an edge, but I'm also not sure because Neanderthals were not present anymore. So it's a difficult question. I think we have two different kinds of humans doing different things, but I think they could both do it in a very good way. So
very good, elaborate answer. The next one says, is there any evidence that Neanderthals created art? And if so, what does it tell us about their cognitive abilities? My listeners love Neanderthals, I could tell.
This is again a very difficult question. This is a very difficult question because I don't go the philosophical line. What is art? I stopped that because the term art, which is defined maybe in the 19th century and before, this neither refers to modern humans nor to Neanderthals. So let's phrase it. I think we talk about objects that are modified in a non-functional way. So objects that don't have a function as a tool, for example, or we talk about paint on cave walls. And there are evidences, of course, that we have some Neanderthal bones with cut marks that are strange. Not bones from Neanderthals, but animal bones found like from the Einhornhöhle or from other regions. And that might be symbolic, but what is it? What does it mean? Difficult. And we have from the cave art in the Pyrenees, France, Spain, we have these papers by Dirk Hoffmann who dated the calcite crust above some of the colors, and he found ages older than 60,000 years. And he said Neanderthals were around in this time, so this paint comes from Neanderthals. So must be. So maybe they also put paint on the walls. We have in Gorham's cave, we have a kind of a hashtag that means like some lines scratched into the rock. But what we don't see from Neanderthals is the drawing of a rhino. Or the drawing of a lion, or whatever. We don't have this from Neanderthals, but we have from Neanderthals, we have things that, that like these cut marks that look not functional. But what it means about I think because people always make, okay, it's art and it has some new brain capacity, whatever, but Neanderthals maybe made something completely else. Maybe they were really good in dancing or singing, and we don't have any evidence for it. And maybe they just made things differently because they perceive the world differently. But just because they did not draw a rhino on the wall doesn't mean they had a different brain capacity or they were more primitive than modern humans are. That's my personal opinion.
I really like that angle of looking at it. And as you said, we will never learn about all their talents just because some things cannot show up in the record that we can investigate. But it does not mean that it wasn't there and that it didn't happen. Let's move on to our HEAS quick takes.
Okay.
That's the lightning round that I told you about. A hobby of yours?
A hobby of mine, gardening.
Love that. What's your favorite food?
Pasta. Pasta with ketchup. No.
That's so German of you.
I also love potatoes. I love pommes and burgers. Yeah.
What's something you've always wanted to try but never ended up doing?
Bungee jumping, maybe.
Me too. I think I will never do it. Are you going to do it?
I don't know. I don't think so. It's not really bungee jumping, but there's like a kind of a dam in the mountains in Germany where they have a big line and you can kind of fly. So you hook yourself to this rope and it's like a big...
But that sounds doable.
When I saw it, I was really close. My wife said, you don't do it. My daughter would maybe do it. And maybe I'm not sure. But
next time.
It's not really bungee jumping. So bungee jumping was wrong. I don't know how it's called, but it's just tie yourself to...
Yeah.
It's like
I know what you mean.
You go down.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
I would do that rather than I'd do bungee jumping. The chances of survival seem bigger to me in that case. What's your favorite mantra or quote? Janet Calso said, just do it. And I love that so much.
If it wouldn't be in the past as it was, it wouldn't be as it is right now.
I like that too. I should start writing down the mantras of all my guests and then have like a collection.
It's from Perry Rhodan, a science fiction series.
Okay. Oh, good. I have the perfect Speakers Ask Speakers question for you then, because you will understand the reference. Red pill or blue pill? Do you know where this is from?
I've heard it, but I don't know.
Okay. Let me introduce this reference to you. So this is a reference to the movie Matrix.
Ah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the two pills symbolize the following. Red pill. Choosing the red pill presents opting to learn the potentially uncomfortable and challenging truth about reality. It symbolizes awakening to a deeper understanding of the world, often involving a radical shift in perception and awareness. Blue pill. Choosing the blue pill represents remaining in comfortable ignorance, blissful ignorance, we could call it. It symbolizes the decision to accept the status quo and to continue believing in a fabricated or simplified version of reality.
Red.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be a scientist, I feel like.
I know it's horrible, but I know they made, of course, take the red one.
Yeah.
It's sour, but take it. Not the...
All right, Marcel, where can people find you online?
Where can people on Google Scholar, on ResearchGate, and all the scientific stuff,
Yeah.
And also on the homepage of our institute, there's also a page. And on how is it called right now? X. In case we have a new paper, I distribute it there because it reaches many people. It's the only reason for this scientific advertisement that I use it. I don't put on X, I'm eating
pasta,
strawberry ice today.
That's what TikTok is for.
Okay.
So Marcel, is there anything you would like to add to this conversation? Anything you feel like I didn't ask you today?
Yeah, before we talked about the contact of the Neanderthals and the modern humans. Mm-hmm. And you know that when you're working in this field, you always imagine how would it be, right? And I think they didn't really recognize that, look, there are Neanderthals. Let's interbreed or let's meet or exchange ideas. I think it's just that you note that there's another maybe tribe or bond of humans, right? You find them they look a little bit differently, but I don't think that they really thought, we are too different, genetically very different and whatever. I think they perceived them as humans, and even in the Levant, so in Southwest Asia, they did for many years, many thousand years, they did even the same stone tool technology. You can't really differentiate them based on their stone tools, for example. So, and this is what I always imagine. So it's not like, hey, cool, look, there's Neanderthals over there. Let's drive them to extinction. No.
Marcel, thank you for giving us this fresh angle, this fresh viewpoint to look at things. And it was a pleasure to chat with you today for the HEAS podcast.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure for me too.
Aurélien, welcome to the HEAS podcast.
Thank you.
So thank you for taking the time out of your day to sit down with me today. And to jump right into it, who are you and what is your job?
So I'm a paleoanthropologist, which means I study the origin of humanity in an evolutionary perspective. And I do two things. I work on fossils, hominin fossils, mostly the skull, and I try to understand how fossils are, how we changed over time, and how our species Homo sapiens originated. And I also do field work, and I go in Kenya, and we look for sites, archaeology, and fossils.
You mentioned a fossil. It's a term that is quite frequently used, and one might think that, a fossil, it's clear what it is. But could you actually describe for us or explain for us what a fossil is compared to a normal bone?
A fossil is basically a very old bone remain. I mean, there's been modified by the time. So what happened is the bone will get somehow buried, and over the years, over the hundreds of years and thousands of years, there will be some chemical process on the bone due to the fact that it is buried, it is in contact with different kind of minerals and with different pressure and so on. And slowly the bone is turning into stone somehow. So it can get preserved longer. This is why we have fossils from dinosaurs that are millions of years old, and we still keep the shape of the bone. And in some cases, there's very, very little bone left. It's only mineral. But you still can work on the morphology.
You've already mentioned a bit about your work. You're doing field work, you're going to Kenya. But could you walk us through a typical day in the life of a paleoanthropologist?
So I'm mostly a researcher. I work for the CNRS, le Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique en France. And so I have the typical day where I should be, I say I should be, but there's a lot of admin, but I will be working on the analysis I'm doing, on the models I'm making based on the fossil data I have. And as this I will be doing just, sitting in front of a computer, and I may, look into 3D fossils and so on. But this is going to be a very computer based kind of work. If I am teaching, then I will have a bit of my day where I'm teaching, and a bit of the day I'll do the computer stuff. And if I'm in the field, it's completely different, of course. So in the field, we wake up around 6 and we start working at 7. So we are camping in the desert somehow, and then we go to the site, we dig, and around 1 p.m. it gets far too hot, so you cannot stay in the sun anymore. So we go back to camp, have lunch, a little break, and by 3 p.m. we start again. So it's a very different kind of day.
You have a lot of diversity then in your job, and I bet it never gets boring, right?
This is the very privilege of doing these kind of jobs, because you have different typical days, and this is, I mean, a huge advantage.
And you said you're camping in the desert. How far away is that from the digging site, and for how many weeks or even months are you staying at that, or how long are you staying there?
So now I am running quite short field season for also private reason. I have a small son, and I just don't want to leave him too long in Europe while I'm there. So we will go, if I go for 4 or 5 weeks, the camp and the digging itself will only be 2-3 weeks.
Okay.
We arrive in a place, we set up a camp, there's nothing, and we leave, there's nothing left. We don't have water, we don't have electricity. We use solar-powered batteries to power computers. We bring the water. We try to get some water from local pumps. We filter it. I mean, it's a little bit of organization, of course, and a lot of discussion with the local authorities, with the people who live there, because we go in the desert, it looks like there's no one, but there is a lot of people there, and we cooperate. They work with us, some of them work with us, we discuss, we meet with the chiefs, the representatives of the villages. It's a very, again, a very diverse when you think about fieldwork, this is not exactly what you think about. You think, okay, I arrived, there's the site, and we're digging there. Yes, but there are many things you need to do to be able to go to the digging part.
That sounds like very intense camping to me. And as you said, you think about the digging part, that's like in the eyes of people, like they can imagine that, but what's happening behind the scenes is not very well known. So thank you for giving us that insight. So over your career, you've been involved in some fascinating discoveries. Could you share one that particularly stands out and tell us why it is significant in understanding human evolution?
Yeah, so there's one that was made by Martin Mierenlaar from Cambridge. Actually, this was a very interesting site. I mean, it's very recent in terms of human evolution because it's around 10,000 years old. So my specialty is more in the million, right? I work on things that are 1,500,000 years old. But in that case, it was when you go to the field and you have objectives, you know what you're looking for, but you may find things that are different than what you expected because we do survey and we identify new places where you have fossils or stone tools, and you may find things that are different from the original idea you had. In that case, this site is called Nataruk, and it's a place where there were many skeletons, and those many skeletons, they were in position that was very puzzling. It didn't look like symmetry. It didn't look like something that would have been organized, and they looked like people who would die and fall and be in this position because they died. And that was I was in the field. The discovery was in 2012, so I was in the field, Martin Mierenlaar's field. At that time, it was called In Africa Project. And I think it's a moving place because you have all those people that have been killed there, and I think we demonstrated that they were killed violently, and that was the oldest crime scene of the history of humanity. So in a way, towards my own research, it's not the most incredible things because it doesn't bring incredible news to what I'm focused on in terms of my research. But in terms of the global thing, that was absolutely incredible, and I think it brings out emotions into people. And it was so when the paper came out in 2016, it was all over the news, all over the press, and people were very interested into this discovery.
There is a general interest in true crime among people, but that's ancient true crime.
Yeah.
And could you find out which demography of people that was? Were they related? Was it a group of,
So we couldn't
find out.
There was no possibility for DNA analysis, so we don't know what they were really.
Okay.
We don't we don't have this information.
Moving on, you mentioned that you have a lot of computer time. You called it armchair work in the talk you had before, because as you mentioned, you spend time in the field, and then as a contrast program, you also have to analyze the data in front of your computer. How have technological advancements in your field, like 3D geometric morphometrics, changed the way you study those ancient human remains? And on that note, could you please explain to us what geometric morphometric means?
Yes. So I think the first thing that has changed for us is in the availability of some fossils. When I was doing my PhD, we did some 3D geometric morphometrics at the time, but we didn't have virtual anthropology, meaning that we could record the morphology of something that was physically in front of us by taking 3D points, some points around the morphology of these things, and exploit this data and analyze them. But I would not come back with a 3D model of the fossil I had seen. Only pictures and notes and description and drawings, and so that more than geometric morphometrics, what changed the way paleoanthropologists work now is the fact that now we can carry in our small laptop hundreds of 3D reproduction of the fossils, and they are very good reproduction. They are the fossils, right? So that is a huge change, because we can do analysis on them, but we can also just look at them, remember the morphology of something you've seen 3 years ago. When you're a paleoanthropologist, you go to the museums, you look at the fossils, the hominin fossils, depending on your research project. But you don't go if you have to go to I don't know if you're based in the UK and you have to go to China to see some fossil specimens. Are you going to go there every year? No, you go there once, you see them, and this is you've seen them, right? Eventually, you may go back once. So now you can just if you go, you see them. You in a way you bring them with you. I mean, it depends of the availability and so on, but it's a huge change. Now your second question, geometric morphometric, right?
Yes. What is geometric morphometrics?
The idea is to analyze the form of things, but in a special way. Basically, when you look at an object, you see the form of the object. This form is affected by different things, and one of the things is the size. The size, and so if you remove the size, you will look into what we call the shape. And the reason, so we're trying to work on the shape of things. Basically, it's like if you have two cups and they're the same, but one is twice bigger than the other, if you analyze the form of those two objects and you compare them, they will turn out to be very different, because one is twice bigger than the other, but in truth, they are the same. So the first thing is we work on the morphology once we've removed the difference in size. So we really focus on the morphology. Second thing we do in geometric morphometrics is there is also a fact that you have the shape is impacted by the size. Basically, because we are biological things, someone who is very, very, very tall will have a slightly different morphology than another person that is much smaller. You can see this in for instance, the gorillas and the chimpanzees. They're very, very similar, but the gorillas are much bigger and their morphology is different. But most of the difference is due to the fact that they're bigger. Mm-hmm. So when you do work in geometric morphometrics, you can focus on the intrinsic morphology of the biological things you are studying. So you remove the size, you remove the effect of size, and you work on this. So it gives you a different perspective on the things you are studying.
So using geometric morphometrics means that you first have to scan the object, the fossil, and then you can compare and see, like taking size out and also only looking at shape, you can compare basically certain species if we talk about hominins, right?
Yeah, you can do this, but the thing is, you don't need to scan.
You don't need to scan?
No, you can do geometric morphometrics, 3D geometric morphometrics with just by describing the morphology with a microscope. The old way, right? This is what I did for my PhD. This is what you did before. You can you put the object in front of you on the table, and you have this 3D, three-dimensional arm, mechanical arm, and you put the tip of the arm somewhere, and you click a pedal, and this gives you a landmark with 3D coordinates. And so you can recreate your shape just without scanning anything. So one of the reasons I started to do geometric morphometrics for my PhD was that because it was the analysis I was doing otherwise were they were mostly morphology, but you have to partition the morphology in small bits. And each small bits you observe, you code, you consider, but differently. So geometric morphometrics for me was a way to take the entire conformation, the entire shape, the entire form, like the morphology of the object, of the mandible, the cranium, and so work on this in its completeness somehow. And I like this. The idea of this, and it was very good for this at the beginning.
So that definitely facilitated research in terms of, as you said, you basically can copy a fossil, you can bring it with you, you can touch it, you can use it for teaching. It's probably so different if you would just show a picture or if you hand out the object and you pass it around in like the classroom. So I imagine that it facilitated a lot of things in your research. What are the limits in your research? What issues are you facing?
So the main issue, of course, is the available fossil record. We don't have enough hominin fossils. We are struggling to answer very complex questions with very limited means, I'd say. That's why I'm doing field work. That's why part of my research is based on trying to, in a way, increase the fossil record, but like mathematically, artificially, I say, because well, that's always a problem when you're a paleontologist, that the available data is not enough. That's the main first issue you face.
And you mentioned during your talk that you are doing something to fight against that limitation, to go out in the field and find new sites. You found a lot. You went to, what was that, the Turkana Basin?
Yes, we work in Kenya, in the southwest of the Turkana Basin, which is north of Kenya. It's close to the border with South Sudan and Ethiopia, and it's in the Rift Valley. So you have this wonderful place for geosciences, the paleosciences, because you're in the rift. The sediments that are exposed are older. Basically, it's exposing old sediments, and in the condition of these places, you have very good preservation of the fossils, of the stone tools, of the sites, and so it's a wonderful place to try to find information about how we evolved. And in that particular project, I'm very focused on what we call the early to middle Pleistocene transition, which is a time period between 1,200,000 to 700,000 years ago, where there are important changes, environmental, climatic ones, that affect many species and the hominin species at the time. And this is also a moment where we have very few hominin fossils. So the well-preserved fossil from that time, it's only about 3, and they're all from East Africa. So we're trying to find more sites, to find, of course, more hominin fossils. But already, if we can, we have found sites where we have information about the behavior of the hominin population at the time, and if we can already, get more information about how they lived, it's already a very good outcome for this kind of project.
And which hominin species would you expect in that time period?
This is a good question, because we don't really know what's happening there. So what we did before that, what we call Homo ergaster, is supposedly all over Africa. I mean, we don't really know, but that's what we have. And at some point after this period, you have what we call different names, but Heidelbergensis or Rhodesiensis, or even now Bodoensis, whatever you call them, and that are basically the population that just lived just at the time right before the separation between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens lineages. So we just before, and some people call them Homo ergaster, Homo erectus. It's very difficult to decide when you have so few fossil specimens to study. So for now, we're not naming something we haven't found yet.
But you're working on it. You're trying to overcome this scarcities. Let's move on to our listener questions. As I already told you, I usually go on social media and I collect questions from our listeners. And today I have 2 questions for you. First one is, what's one of the most common misconceptions about human evolution that you encounter?
I think the most common is an old one now. I hope it's getting less and less common, but the most common one is about to say that we descend from chimpanzees, and that they are kind of our ancestors, and that we evolved, they didn't evolve, they stay the same. And I think this is it's very common because we, as humans, we have huge difficulties to understand that we're part of the environment, the nature itself, and that we are animals. So we see our evolution as directional towards some kind of amazing goals, which are. It is not. It just happened, and we cannot conceive that other primates like the chimpanzees or the gorillas also evolved like us from a common ancestor. Like the common ancestor was not a chimpanzee, and there was something different, and it changed over time, like we did.
Thanks for debunking. Second one is, which hominin species do we currently have DNA from?
Okay, that's all of them, I would say. If you think about it, because we are like a lot of them. I mean, all of them, I don't know, but I understand. So first, there have been like recent-ish studies in the past 10, 12, 14 years in paleogenomics where we discovered that things that we thought were not the case before, were not possible, were actually possible. For instance, we believe now, we think from the data we have in paleogenomics, that the Neanderthals and Homo sapiens did met, and we find nowadays in some populations, introgression, we find DNA from Neanderthals in Homo sapiens population, and this we didn't think it was possible before. We can identify also DNA from another group that we call the Denisovan, which we haven't defined in terms of taxonomy because we don't have enough information on the morphology of those populations, but they are close to Neanderthal, and we also find traces of their DNA in some modern human population, not all, and apparently there are other population that they call the geneticists call the ghost population that we can track back and we can find in some of the population nowadays. But if you think about it, really, most hominin species would have left DNA into us because we evolved from them, right? So that was it's always like a little joke, to be honest.
In that sense, in that interpretation of this question, it's also sometimes a topic of conversation that Neanderthals as a species did not disappear because they, in a way, live through us at a certain proportion, of course, but yeah. But that's a whole other can of worms, I think. But that's interesting that you interpreted that question this way, because I thought what this person wanted to know was which species did we sequence so far? Did we obtain genetic data from?
Oh, yeah, well, very few. Very few, because we're talking about us and the Neanderthals, and Denisova is not technically is not a species. And we have DNA from a few specimens from La Cima de los Huesos, which is about 400,000 years old, which is the oldest hominin DNA we have, which also means that when we are seeing genomic-based studies that are dealing with things that are older than 400,000 years old, they are using the data to model what happened, but we don't have the hard evidence from the DNA side. We should get some, I guess, because we are able to sequence much older DNA. We've done it for other fossils, but for hominins, the oldest is about 400,000 years old.
Let's move on to the next segment, which is called the HEAS Quick Takes. This is a rapid fire round, and just answer spontaneously. One tool you can't work without.
My computer.
A hobby of yours outside of science?
Skateboarding.
Skateboarding. Oh, wow. I tried once and I completely, utterly failed. It's hard. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Extrovert.
What's one thing about your job that people often misunderstand or don't know?
Everything. The name. They don't understand what I say. When I say I'm a paleoanthropologist, they don't understand.
Do they just skip, or do they at least ask?
They think I'm a paleontologist or I'm an archaeologist or something like that.
So good that you're here today, because I asked you what your job was, and I think you did a great job in elaborating and explaining what you do. So now you can send those people this podcast episode. What do you do to motivate yourself?
I drink coffee.
Coffee and skateboarding.
That's it.
Then the next segment is called Speakers Ask Speakers, and I told you that previous guests are leaving questions for upcoming guests. That one is for you. Do you have any regrets about becoming a scientist?
I don't have regrets. It's a wonderful, amazing opportunity to be doing science, to work in things that are incredibly complex, but so interesting to look into. And I do feel extremely fortunate and special that I could achieve, and continue to do science after my PhD, after my first postdoc, my second postdoc, and so on. It's a complicated life. So I don't have any regrets, but I am a bit sad of what it is becoming. And it's harder, even for people with the job. It's harder and harder and harder to do your job as a scientist, and not just in France, in other places. And I'm wondering where this ends. And for the kind of research we're doing, or I'm doing, maybe it's a bit protected because paleoanthropology, human evolution is popular. So, but yeah, no, it's not a good moment right now for science in general. It's hard.
Thanks for sharing that with us. You're not the first one telling me that, and I think it's good to mention that to raise awareness about this problem. It's getting harder and harder. And also, as you mentioned, you just had a son, and people with children, for them it's even harder because you cannot accommodate your life to circumstances in the job at all times. So if you move abroad also, it's not very likely that you have a support system there. So something has to change.
Yeah.
Where can people find you online if they want to know more about you?
Sorry, where do people find me online? I have a website. It's called AurelienMounier.eu. There's a website for the Transceival project, the fieldwork project, So it's trans-evol.org, something like that. And I do have Twitter, but I don't tweet much.
And to wrap this up, is there anything you feel like I didn't ask you or anything you would like to add?
No, I think I'm happy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We covered everything.
Yeah.
So Aurélien, thank you so much for sitting down with me for the HEAS podcast today.
Thank you.